Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to my channel, Do Ministry Gaming, and in this video, I'll be doing a build guide on the Ice Shot Deadeye character that I've been playing over the last few weeks. Now, right off the hop, I'll say that this is a high budget glass cannon type character, so it is very much offensive focused. It has less defensive layers than I normally would put on a character, but I did want to just try it and see what would happen, and as it turns out, there are certain mechanics that keep this character very much alive even though the health pool for this character is quite low. It's sub 3,000, which sounds really extreme. But because it's ice shot and you're freezing everything, you do stay alive. Your screen clear is multiple screens away. And you actually have 100% blind on enemies as well, which is a huge portion of your damage mitigation. And so I've actually found that I've been dying a lot less than I actually initially thought I was going to when I put this experiment together. I was a little hesitant at first to run a character that has less than 3,000 life, but I just went for it and it turned out pretty well. And because this was designed as a glass cannon, the offensive capabilities of this build are actually insane. As you can see from the intro clips, this is the first build I've ever played and ever put together in a trade league where I've been able to kill Awakening 9 Cyrus Phase 3 before he actually teleports and does anything else other than the first beam that he shoots. This is the first character and only character I've ever made that has been able to accomplish that. It did also very easily complete all the other encounters in the game, of course, because of the insane damage that it does. Maven, you're basically insta-phasing Maven on every phase. And so you don't really have to worry about anything other than the DDR, the dancing memory game. But other than that, all the other stuff that she does is pretty trivial because you insta-phase her. And same goes for every other fight. This has been a very, very satisfying character to play offensively. And defensively, like I say, your damage is so high that there's very few things left on the screen usually to actually damage you. And everything that is remaining is frozen because you're playing Ice Shot. And then anything that isn't frozen is chilled, and chilled means blind on this character. And so they're blinded. They're usually really far away from you. The map clearing is multiple screens away because of Herald of Ice and the Ice Shot AoE as well. So this character has just been absolutely insane. Much more durable than I thought it was going to be with only sub 3,000 life. But overall, for a softcore experience, it is a lot of fun to play, and I definitely recommend checking it out. And so, without further ado, let's get started. All right, and just one real quick thing I want to show here before we dive into the build guide itself is the Hydrosphere interaction with Ice Shot. And so if you're familiar with Ice Shot, when you shoot Ice Shot and you hit something, you do the damage on hit, and then also the Ice Shot does a little bit of an AoE cone in front of it. So it shoots out a little cone AoE afterwards that does damage as well. And so usually when you're fighting something, this is what it's going to look like. Let's say the Hydrosphere is a monster. You're going to hit it, but you're also going to shoot like this cone AoE outside the back of it. And that's what makes the clearing for the skill pretty insane when you add Herald of Ice to it as well. So the packs kind of explode and the Herald of Ice explodes and everything just kind of explodes multiple screens away, especially when you're running like GMP for clearing and chain and what have you. So that works really well. But in particular, I want to talk about the Hydrosphere interaction for single target and how you can actually double your damage with just by adding Hydrosphere and Pierce into your character. So let's say Alva here is the boss or the monster. Normally, if you were to barrage Alva, you would just hit Alva and then the cone AoE will come up back. You're hitting her once per shot. Now, with Hydrosphere, what you can do is put the Hydrosphere right in front of Alva, and you're going to hit the Hydrosphere instead, and the conal AoE is going to hit Alva. Okay, that's if you had no Pierce. Okay, that would do the same damage as if you just hit Alva normally. Now, if you added Pierce into your build, what's going to happen is the cone on the Hydrosphere is going to hit Alva, and then the projectile will pierce through the Hydrosphere, and then also hit Alva. So you're actually doubling the damage when you run Hydrosphere that way. And that is a large portion of what makes the single target so insane on this build. What I normally do is I place the Hydrosphere right in front of the boss, and I would shoot the ice shot into the Hydrosphere. As you can see, the cone will come out, and because I have Pierce as well, you need to have at least one Pierce somewhere. I have it on my gloves. Then the projectile will carry through the Hydrosphere and hit the boss. This is a very important interaction for the single target and absolutely a must-have for the build. There's multiple ways you can get Pierce, and I'll talk about it when I get through the gear section here. But just know that when I talk about the single target barrage damage, I am also talking about this Hydrosphere interaction, which is pretty cool. All right, so we'll start with the skill gems, and as usual, we have a 6-link for the single target setup and a 6-link for the clear setup with our bow builds, which is pretty typical. And so for the single target, we are running Ice Shot, Barrage, Inspiration, Elemental Damage with attacks, Hypothermia, and added cold damage. And just a reminder that it's really important for the single target portion to also run Hydrosphere as well as 1 level of Pierce, as I've shown earlier in the video, for doubling your single target damage. And then for the map clearing, we are running Ice Shot, Inspiration, Elemental Damage with attacks, Chain, and then I went with Mirage Archer and Greater Multiple Projectiles, and that's because I have the damage to support that. To run all 3 Chain, GMP, and Mirage Archer is pretty taxing on the damage. So if you have the damage and you're geared enough, then this feels pretty good. Otherwise, I would recommend keeping Chain always, but either replacing Mirage Archer or Greater Multiple Projectiles with Hypothermia if you're lacking a little bit in damage on the map clearing. So pick the one that you like. Usually I keep GMP and I drop Mirage Archer and I put in Hypothermia, but that is up to you. Mirage Archer feels just fine as well. In terms of the auras, we are running Precision for the accuracy and the crit. Precision with a few accuracy nodes on the ranger side of the tree will cap you in terms of hit, so very handy to have. Then from there, Hatred and Herald of Ice. Hatred for the damage, of course, and then Herald of Ice also for the damage, but for the map clearing explosions as well. Herald of Ice can help you clear screens away, and so that feels really good. And then all of that with Enlighten 4 to fit. Then onto the debuff setup, you are running the typical Arcanist brand and exposure spell, which in this case is Frostbomb, not Wave of Conviction. Frostbomb for the cold exposure, and then Sniper's Mark. And then you do want to make sure you're running Hydrosphere. Now, I have this separated because I don't link Hydrosphere with Arcanist brand. Arcanist brand will proc on the boss and it will drop the Frostbomb, it will drop the Sniper's Mark, but you do want to manually cast a Hydrosphere because you want to place it properly in front of the boss so that you can get the double damage. But that's how I do it. But you can, of course, if you'd like, put it on the Arcanist brand as well. I don't think you'll get as much success in terms of getting the effectiveness of the Hydrosphere when it comes to having it on the Arcanist brand in terms of placement, but that is up to you. And then finally, for the utility, I'm running Dash, Vault Grace, of course. I am also running Blood Rage. Now, in a lot of the intro clips, I didn't actually have Blood Rage activated. I always forget to use this. But if you want to go all out damage, you do want to pop this right before the boss kill, and you'll do quite a bit more damage with this on. So Blood Rage if you'd like, and then Portal. All right, so I'll go into the gear now. I'll start with the bow. With the bow, the important stats are the +2 arrows, the flat cold damage, T1 if you can get it, and the cold damage per 10 dex. So the rest of the suffixes you want to fill in are as much penetration as you can get, as much attack speed as you can get, and then any type of crit multi or crit chance as well. Those are good mods to have. Next, I'll move over to the chest piece. The chest piece, you are running High-Rez Ire. This is a very good chest piece for this build because of the flat added cold damage. It's also got 10% dodge to attack and spell hits, which is amazing for any ranger class to get to dodge cap. And then it's also got the flat dexterity on it as well because you are semi-stacking dexterity in this build. And so High-Rez is a fantastic chest piece. I have mine with +2 socketed projectile gems, but a +2 proj High-Rez is a bit expensive. You could probably do without it. Next, we'll go on to the Helm. I am running a Fractal Thoughts. This Helm is very good, very, very good for this build because you are stacking that dexterity. And so if you do it properly, you're going to get all the good things that come with this helmet, which is the crit multi if dex is higher than intelligence, which it will be if you're stacking dexterity. And then 1% elemental damage per 10 dexterity, which you're also going to have. And then 15% increased dexterity if strength is higher than intelligence. And so that's a bit of a balancing act because your strength and intelligence are usually pretty close on this build. But when you do that, you get the 15% increased dexterity as well. And then even a little bit of life per 10 dex. But also, of course, for the Helm enchant, make sure to get the Ice Shot enchant. 40% increased damage is the best one you can get. Now, damage-wise, this is the best helmet that you can get. But as an alternative, you can also run Ascendance Chant is also very good with the attack speed and the triggering of the spells. With this, you know, you're going to trigger your spells a lot faster, like Frostbomb and Sniper's Mark, than Arcanist Brand will. Arcanist Brand takes 2 seconds to trigger these two, whereas Ascendance Chant takes 0.6 seconds to trigger those two things. And you can also even put Hydrosphere into Ascendance Chant as well, and you just need to aim your mouse cursor in terms of placing the Hydrosphere properly. And so for quality of life, that is pretty good when it comes to bossing, just because you can place the Hydrosphere where you're shooting versus placing your Hydrosphere manually, and then the boss moves slightly, and then all of a sudden you're not getting the effect. So quality of life wise, I'd say Ascendance Chant is really, really quite good. However, wearing this helmet versus Fractal Thoughts in this current setup right now is a 2 million damage impact. And so it's up to you whether you want to give that up or not to get that quality of life. But Fractal Thoughts definitely does a lot more damage. All right, from here, we're going to go into the Quiver. I'm running a Shaper Quiver, a pretty standard one for elemental-based ranged bow characters. It's got crit chance, it's got crit multi, it's got additional arrow, it's got elemental damage with attacks, attack speed, and life. And I also have Frenzy Charge on crit, which is actually quite nice as a Deadeye as well. The alternative Quiver that is quite popular with Ice Shot deck stacking is Hyri's Demise. I would say not this one exactly. It's got point blank on it, but I'm running a Deadeye with Far Shot, so you don't want one with point blank. I just happen to have this. And so Hyri's Demise is usually pretty good because you're also getting cold damage per dex, and then attack speed, as well as even area effect is slightly good, and life gain per hit. This Quiver with my current dexterity actually does less damage than this rare Quiver over here, so I would recommend and use the rare Quiver. I've got about 700 dexterity, I think. And so, you know, at the moment, this rare Quiver is better. If you were stacking more dexterity, there are Ice Shot builds out there that stack up to 1,000 dexterity. And in those situations, the Hyri's Demise does surpass a Quiver like this. And so I guess it is all dependent on kind of how your setup is. But for my current setup, a rare Quiver such as this does outperform the Hyri's Demise. All right, on to the Amulet. We are running the Pandemonious Amulet. This is a fantastic amulet. Pretty much everything on this is amazing. The increased cold damage, the dex even on the base, but then also chilling enemies for 1 second when hit, reducing action speed by 30%, which is fantastic. Blind chilled enemies on hit. Okay, that is a huge part of your survivability. Even though you have less than 3,000 life, the blind is a huge add to your survivability. Otherwise, blind is quite hard to get on a ranger build. And usually it's things like 10% chance to blind, so you're not always blinding. But with the Pandemonious, you are, and that is just a huge benefit to your survivability. It really adds a lot. And then, of course, the damage penetration to chilled enemies. This amulet is absolutely, I think, the best that you can get in this slot. And then for the anointment, I'm running Whispers of Doom here for the second curse, which, of course, you're running Frostbite and Sniper's Mark. From there, I'll do the rings. I'm running 1 Circle of Fear for the Herald of Ice, increased damage and buff effect, which is really good. And then the other one is your Curse with Frostbite hit. That's mandatory on one of your rings, of course. And then for this ring, I'm just trying to get as much life and resist as I can on that ring. From there, I'll walk down to the gloves here. For the gloves, the important mods are the increased damage with hits against chilled enemies. That is quite a bit of damage that you can get. Now, on the gloves also, I like to run my Pierce here on the gloves for the Hydrosphere interaction. You can get it elsewhere, of course. If you'd like, even you can put 2 points into the tree and grab it right here. Projectile damage and Pierce. That's just 2 extra points. That is a very budget way to get it if you can't afford some gloves like these quite yet. The third alternative, of course, is just running a Pierce gem, which I would not recommend because these other gems are much more damage. And so gloves is really the optimal place to get it, but it can get quite expensive to craft, good gloves with this and damage against chilled enemies. But from there, you can get a lot of other things on gloves that are very useful as well, depending on how much you want to spend. Of course, Culling Strike, if you can afford it, with Pierce and damage against chilled enemies. Absolutely a good thing to have on the gloves. Of course, the grip gloves also get you the implicit proj damage. You can also get proj damage rolled on the gloves themselves. And so a lot of damage you can get here, but I also need a lot of resist as well and life. And so these are the ones I went with. I just went with the 2 mods. Culling Strike you can get from a Cluster Jewel as well, which is where I've got it on my build. And so that's what I went with for the gloves. I guess just one more thing to mention with the gloves is this pair of gloves happens to have Aspect of the Cat. It is not a skill that I use. It is not mandatory to have it. You don't need it at all. So if you are looking for similar gear to mine in the exact slots, you do not need to get Aspect of the Cat. From here onto the belt, of course, I'm running my favorite Headhunter, of course, as always. But obviously, this build does not need it at all. You don't need it. As a matter of fact, if you run a rare belt with just elemental damage with attacks T1, you are better off with damage already anyway, especially on single target. And so Headhunter is not required by any means. You can just run a rare belt here. What I would recommend as an alternative is a Stygian Vise with some good life and resist. And then, like I say, the T1 elemental damage with attack mod. And then finally, on to the boots. The boots, the critical pieces, of course, are getting a lot of resistances on your boots. This is the key piece, really, especially if you're running one Circle of Fear. The key piece where you're going to get a lot of your resistances from. And so this is a great slot to do it. What's fantastic about running a Deadeye instead of like a Raider is you don't need Tailwind on crit. And so boots like this comes a lot cheaper without Tailwind. So for this one, I went with Elusive on crit and Onslaught on kill, which of course even Onslaught on kill you can very easily get elsewhere as well. So not mandatory for the boots. But Elusive on crit is definitely a very good to have, movement speed, and as many resists as you can get on the boots. All right, on to the flask. I am running Bottled Faith. This is absolutely an insane flask for a crit-based build, worth every penny. I know it's quite expensive this league, 12, 15 exalts, something like that. And in my opinion, still worth the cost. So definitely get one if you can. Huge damage boost. I'll start over here. A Cinder Swallow, Onslaught Flask, of course, with the increased crit chance, if you can get it. And this is where you can get your Onslaught, I guess, so you don't really need it on your boots, but I had it on my boots anyway. So a very good flask to run. Dying Sun, +2 proj, and increased air effects. Super, super good. This flask is very cheap relative to the other two. And so very good flask to have, and the less fire damage taken even. So very good. From there, I'm also running the Seething Life Flask because I just like to have one, and a Quicksilver Flask of Warding, which is also something I like to have. If you want to absolutely min-max the damage on this build, you can drop these two and run yourself a Diamond Flask in place of one of them. And then an Adzir's Promise Flask for the other one. Adzir's Promise is actually quite good if you can fit it in. Of course, the gain elemental damage as extra chaos is very good, but also the chaos resistance is very welcome. I'm running -40 on this build, and so having the Adzir's Promise does feel pretty good when it comes to chaos resistance. All right, on to the passive tree. We'll start with the Ascendancy. I am running a Deadeye here for the most damage possible. And I'm going over here for Far Shot. It gives you up to 60% more damage versus something like a Raider setup where you're running point blank is only 30% more damage. And so Far Shot is fantastic for the Deadeye. Of course, from there, Endless Munitions +2 projectiles is just absolutely insane. Then Gathering Winds for the Tailwind effect. Saves you the boot slot there. And then Focal Point as well for your single target damage, primarily on your Sniper's Mark to increase the effect of that. Absolutely insane. This is the highest damage Ascendancy for this build. You can, of course, run it with any of the other ones. No problem at all. You just kind of have to change it up a bit and run point blank, for example, if you're a Raider in particular, to get that exposure as well. Instead of running Far Shot. All right, from here, I'll go over the passive tree. The PoB, of course, is in the description below. But this is a pretty standard and typical Ranger tree, I would say. But just go over it and some of the sort of key things to note. You do start off as a Ranger here. You do want to pick up Winter Spirit and Flash Fleet Freeze Cluster at some point here. This gives you the rest of your Fizz to cold damage. Not that you're doing a ton of Fizz damage, and it's not a big portion of it, but still nice to have with the increased cold damage to attacks as well. And then Flash Freeze gives you the cold damage, prod speed, and the effect of cold ailments. From there, you would normally just come down, I guess, grab Wind Dancer, grab some life nodes, maybe pick up this cluster jewel at the end. But from down here, you can also get Fangs of Frost, which is really good. Cold penetration, cluster there. But typically you would kind of move over here and you would grab lethality, which is crit chance, crit multi. You would grab primeval force, which is penetration, which is great damage. You also want to make sure you grab mana leech here. This is a very convenient 1-point node off this corner for mana leech. Very welcome to have if you're not running a Lionize fall jewel here. And then you can also grab the dexterity cluster. Now, in this current version of the build, this is one of the last priorities I would get. And so if you're short on points, I would skip this. It is a lot of dexterity, but relatively speaking, it's less damage than a lot of these other things that you can get. And so because we aren't actually stacking crazy dexterity, like say if you're stacking like 1,000 dexterity, then yes, for sure, but we're only at kind of that 700 mark. So this is, in actuality, relatively speaking, not as powerful as some of these other things you can pick up. Then from there, you come up, you grab your King of the Hill, Master Fletcher bow cluster over here, of course. Then you duck in, grab the jewel socket, and from there, I do run an intuitive leap here to grab Heartseeker, Acuity, Herbalism, and the Frenzy Charge. It saves you if you want to get all these. Otherwise, you'd have to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more points. But you get to skip that with the intuitive leap here. So that's quite convenient. Then you also want to get, of course, Acro, Phase Acro. Pretty standard. Getting this jewel socket over here. I do have a large cluster jewel socket in here. I'll talk about those at the end. And then come here, grab the Blood Drink of Life, grab this socket. Come over here, and then pretty standard, come up to Blood Siphon, Trickery, and Assassination. All right, so onto the cluster jewels. I am running 2 sets of cluster jewels. The first over here is a large cluster jewel. I'm running Blanketed Snow and Cold to the Core. Cold to the Core is cold damage per 25 dexterity. And since you are stacking some dexterity, you are going to get a large benefit from that as well. Even you get some from the int and the strength as well. And then Blanketed Snow is 10% penetration. Absolutely insane. You can't get a third node here, of course. It's starting to get expensive. I don't even have a third one here, but you can always get Prismatic Heart or any of the elemental damage ones there. From there, the medium cluster jewels. On this side, I'm running 1 pressure points and quick getaway, which is the crit chance attack speed for quick getaway, and pressure points is the double damage node there. And so that is a very good medium cluster jewel. I think I have a couple other of these as well on the other jewel socket. But for the other one, you only need 1 of these. I'm running Evil Eye and Wish for Death. This is where I get my Culling Strike from. You have Calling Strike against cursed enemies. So I like running one of these in the absence of getting it on my gloves. Because Calling Strike is insane, 10% more damage for one cluster jewel, plus you're getting other effects. That's fantastic, so I always grab one there. And then onto this other cluster jewel down here. This large cluster, I'm running Blast Freeze, Disorienting Display, and Prismatic Heart. You don't actually really need Disorienting Display. This is really just here for damage because your Pandemonious gives you 100% blind, right? And so you don't really need the blind here. Normally you'd run this on a bow build just for the blind even, but 10% not that much, and your Amulet gives it to you, so you don't need it. So you can run anything here if you want. Prismatic Heart, I usually like to run this because usually I do find resist a bit of a struggle if you want to run a lot of damage on your gear. And so Prismatic Heart is always welcome for me on an elemental build. And then Blast Freeze, you want one of these, whichever jewel you want it on. Freezes, you inflict spread to other enemies within radius of 12. It's huge for an obvious reason of, defensive layer. Everything's frozen. From here, I've got one Cold Conduction Storm Rider. Enemies chilled by your hits are shocked, so you're basically chilling everything because you're ice shot, and so everything is shocked. So this is a nice damage increase. And then as well, I'm running Storm Rider, which is giving me power charges when I shock a chilled enemy, which is always. And then the other one, I'm running another pressure point cluster. You can run it with Quick Getaway again. I just bought Basics of Pain because it was there for crit chance and damage and pressure points. From there, finally the regular jewels, really as much damage as you can get, as much crit multi as you can get. And so for something like this, 2 crit multi and 2 damage mods is about the best you can get. And so I've got a few of these, 2 crit multi, crit chance and damage, 2 crit multi, attack speed, damage, and 2 crit multi and 2 crit chance. So as much crit multi as you can get. And then finally, the Watcher's Eye. I'm running a pretty nutty one, actually. I've got crit chance while affected by hatred, cold damage while affected by hatred. And so those are definitely mods you're looking for. Even one of those two would be fantastic as a Watcher's Eye if that is what you can afford. And then for the Pantheon, I do run Soul of Lunaris as well as Soul of Rislatha. Usually I run Soul of Rislatha for longer boss fights like Cyrus to keep my life flasks up. But now that I think about it, you probably don't even need this. At my damage level right now, I killed Cyrus phase 3 A9 before he even teleported. And so not really as necessary as it normally would be. And so feel free to grab any of these other ones for that. And then for the bandits, I'm going with 2 additional skill points. All right, everybody, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. I also stream on Twitch Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Times are in the description below. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.